Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Tier by Tier. Today, we're going to be talking about the German reserve planes, the HE-51s. Right now, we're flying out the German HE-51A1, and these planes are kind of interesting as far as reserve planes are concerned and planes in the game are concerned, because the HE-51 was outdated by the time of its release. So it was never really... Is that really a medium tank? That is not. Alright. It was never really a competitive plane flying against others, so it should be kind of interesting to see how it performs in realistic battles, because it was used by the Germans, by the Luftwaffe, and it was also used by the Spanish nationalists in the Spanish Civil War. But it immediately found problems because it was flying against things like the I-16 Ishak and various other planes, flying against the Tupolev SB bombers, which were faster than the HE-51 by 70 miles per hour. That is a lot. By any standards, that is a lot. But I'm going to turn down the sound. So it was immediately outdated as I failed to shoot down this Nimrod. It was immediately outdated against its competitors and its contemporaries. So it'll be interesting to see as far as how it controls, how it works against other planes. Obviously, with what you're going to be flying against, it shouldn't cause too much of a problem to be sort of not as fast. The HE-51 is fairly maneuverable, which is nice. But again, it's probably no more maneuverable than any other biplane as far as what you're going to be flying in game is concerned. So it really does have some issues to address because it's slower than most everything else. I believe it is the slowest reserve plane, making it the slowest plane in the game, possibly, other than maybe a bomber here or there. But it's an interesting plane to fly because it's very much the underdog. Excuse me, still a little sick, unfortunately. What we're looking at right now is the HE-51A1, which is the first production run after all of the prototypes. It was powered by a BMW 6 V12 engine, producing about 750 horsepower. So, while that sounds like a lot, and it does accelerate fairly well, it's still not very fast. So it's sort of a very interesting thing where it has a monster of a power plant for its time. It has a more powerful power plant than the Russian planes, I believe, which were producing about 710 brake horsepower by the time you get to the MiG, or not the MiG, the I-15 Biz. I'm going to try and take out this pea shooter here with my awful shot. There we go. By the time you get to the I-15 Biz. So this has 40 more horsepower than that, but will travel at something about 30 miles an hour slower. So it's quite odd. Not sure if I mentioned, first flight occurred in 1933, was formally introduced in 1935, took part in the Spanish Civil War, all that. Its armament, as you see, I've been shooting as I have to return to base because I was spraying all over the place. It's armed with two MG-17s, which are 7.92 millimeter machine guns, 500 rounds per gun, giving you a total of 1,000 rounds. Oh, and we've already won. Interesting game. Total of 1,000 rounds. The machine gun itself is actually pretty good. It's a slightly higher caliber than the other guns, the 7.7s or the 7.62 machine guns. And it does fly fairly well. You don't have the same issues, really, at least not in that match, that you had in the Spanish Civil War, or that you would have had flying against I-16s where you just can't catch them. It was said of the HE-51 that it was sufficient for getting the initial drop on other planes, so making the first strike, but it was not sufficient for continued sustained combat. So you're not going to want to get into a fight with an I-16 because he's going to be able to accelerate, come back for a shot on you, and if he feels that he's out of control in the dogfight, he can just level out and fly away, which is a very difficult thing to take care of in the reserve planes. So let's go ahead and see what we can get in the HE-51B1, and we'll check that out right now. So here we are flying out the HE-51B1 as a Blenheim flies overhead. Very similar to the HE-51A1, except for some additional structural strengthening, specifically in the wings, and the addition of a 170-liter external fuel tank. Now, this Blenheim is actually giving me cause for concern. If I can get my camera to settle down. So we're gonna see what we can do about him. He's gonna be faster than us in every way, so I'm gonna let this 110 take care of him, because I simply can't catch up to him. Which is really the big fault of the HE-51. Now, one of the things that you're probably going to want to do with the 51, unless you can fight things like that Nimrod at very close range and try to get them to bleed speed, is you're going to want to use it as a ground attack vehicle, because that's what it was used for in the Spanish Civil War, where it was used heavily as a fighter. It was essentially relegated to its light ground attack role because of its ineffectiveness as a fighter. It was, like I said, outdated as soon as it came out. To put this in perspective, the HE-51B was first, production was switched over from the A to the B in January of 1936. Planes that came out before that include the Hawker Hurricane. So, as you can see, for its time, it was not exactly exceptional. So you have very lacking performance, which is unfortunate, obviously. Oh, I didn't want to. Unfortunate, obviously, but if you want to fly this plane, you have to understand that you're going to get outrun by everything. And you have to understand that there's only a few things that you can do in order to compensate for that. One of the things you can do is use it in a ground attack role, as was eventually done by the Luftwaffe and the Spanish nationalists. That seems to be the best choice. One second. That seems to be the best choice, simply because you'll have to be a very good pilot in order to overcome a massive speed advantage between you and other planes. You'll have to work on baiting people or catching them in a maneuver like this, and really just laying into them. And I'm not a very good shot, apparently, with these machine guns. Got the kill assist, though, so that's nice. That's a small bonus. Woo-hoo-hoo! Hello. Didn't see you there. So we're going to see if I can chase down this hawk. And as you can see, he's immediately flying away with great speed. He is escaping and heading down to the trees. Got the kill there. Probably not really my kill. Probably belonged to one of those VF-110s. But it's one of those situations where it just kind of, that's how the situation unfolded. But as you can see, you kind of have to be in the right place at the right time to get some of these kills. I think it performs slightly better historically than it did, or slightly better in-game than it did historically. As you can see, I'm pretty much in level flight at low altitude here, running at about 190 miles per hour. I think the cruising speed for this thing was somewhere around 176. So I'll probably slowly lose speed at higher altitudes, 4,000 meters or something like that, where it was actually the operational altitude. But if you're going to fly this, you're going to fly it against superior opponents all the time. So I recommend either squatting up with somebody else, or if you don't want to do that, make sure you always get the drop on somebody. If somebody gets the drop on you, you're pretty much done, unfortunately, because your plane just isn't good enough, it's not fast enough, it doesn't accelerate quickly enough to outmaneuver things, or to not really outmaneuver things, because of your slow speed, you will outmaneuver things, you'll outturn them, and all of that, but you won't be able to out-dogfight them, because they will have a constant energy advantage. So, HE-51, B-1, the A-1, if you want to use them as fighters, early pre-war fighters, you will have to go against planes that are better than you. In one of the matches that I flew that I didn't record, I was flying against a MiG-3, so a MiG-315, and that was interesting, to say the least. So you'll have to check that out, see for yourself, fly it for yourself. It's not a bad plane by any means, but it is very slow. So that's something you have to keep in mind when flying it. So let's move on. Let's check out the C1. Okay, so here we are flying out the HE-51 C1. It's very similar to the B1 with the additional reinforcement of the wings and the 170-liter external fuel tank. However, this one was after the HE-51 had been relegated to its ground attack role. It was turned into the C1, and it has the option to hold, I believe, 6 10-kilogram bombs, so 22-pound bombs. And while that's nice and all, it's not entirely useful, and this is my opinion here on the topic. I don't think it's very useful, mostly because anything you can destroy with a 10-kilogram bomb, you can probably destroy with machine gun fire. So while it might be good to to strafe a line of artillery trucks or the vehicle trucks, anti-air sort of things, going down a straight road, just fly over, drop a few bombs, and hopefully get some kills on those. You can do the exact same thing with machine guns, although it might take a little bit longer, obviously. I'm actually going to come down here and see if these... Whoa, whoa. There they are. A medium tank. That's not a medium tank. Is it? I thought that was artillery. Apparently it's a tank. But it'll give you roughly the same ability with machine gun fire. Now, it might be a little bit easier because you don't have to... wow, there's a lot of anti-air over here. It might be a little bit easier because you don't have to waste shots. Machine gun fire should you get into an engagement with another airplane. But at the same time, carrying those additional bombs do really hinder your flying ability. It'll change your top speed, it'll change your climb rate for the worse, obviously. So you sort of... what ends up happening is planes that already had an advantage over you as far as speed now have an even greater advantage, but the planes that you had an advantage over as far as maneuverability have now closed the gap if you still have those bombs attached. And that really causes some issues if you're trying to stay alive in this HE-51, which, let me tell you, is not easy. If you end up getting into sort of dogfighting engagements. So the best thing to do, I believe, with these HE-51s is forego the whole progression of the airplane and go straight for a ground attack roll. It just... Are those really tanks? That seems weird. I don't think those are supposed to be tanks. Update 1.39 just came out. I'm pretty sure these are supposed to be artillery. I've seen this before, where there's stationary medium tanks in those sort of artillery slots. And I kind of, I don't know, didn't really pay attention to it before. But I don't know that they're supposed to be there. Anyway, I suggest using it as a ground attack vehicle, a light ground attack vehicle. Maybe use the, maybe use the bombs, the 10-kilogram bombs, if you feel comfortable doing that. I kind of don't. I'm not the best pilot, to be honest. And I like having that additional maneuverability of having a biplane. But the problem here is that while they are reserve planes, obviously, they're not meant to be anything spectacular. I believe that the HE-51s are probably the lesser of the reserve planes. Their machine guns are surprisingly good, which that's really what surprised me, was that sort of machine gun fire seems very solid. So I'm not trying to say they're useless, but they're probably not as good statistically as the other reserve planes or other things you're going to fly against. Historically, they had problems with this I-16. You're probably going to fly against a lot of I-16s, especially now with the update with 1.39, where there's an additional I-16, which I believe is a Type 24. There's a Type 17 and the Type 24, I believe, at Tier 1. And, it'll be interesting to see what it can do. So it'll be interesting to note what you guys think about these German planes, these reserve planes. if you think they're not as good as the other planes, or if you have sort of conflicting experiences with them. Surprisingly, I've done fairly well with the reserve planes, all the reserve planes actually. But I do believe that if you're flying out in realistic battles, the German reserve planes might you might have a hard time. So, whereas with the Russian ones or even the British ones at some points, you may have a really good game where you get 4 or 5 kills and everything just the planes just really come into their own. You may not have that with the German ones. I certainly haven't yet, but as a ground attack vehicle, I will say, surprisingly good. The machine guns do a surprising amount of damage to soft targets. I'm not sure if I'm basing that off anything realistic, or if it's just sort of just something that I feel that isn't necessarily true. But as a ground attack vehicle, the HE-51 has actually turned out to be pretty good for me over the course of these matches. So it's not a bad dogfighter when it comes to fighting other reserve planes, but if you're fighting stuff higher than that, you're going to have a problem, as I fly right through that tree. So my suggestion would be, use it for ground attack. It's pretty good. It's not exceptional. Obviously, it's outclassed by other planes that it's going to be flying against. You're going to have to pay a lot of attention. But still, it is a solid plane to fly. It doesn't have too many weaknesses other than that low top speed and the low acceleration. So give it a shot. Fly it out. If you like German planes, this is actually a fairly decent option for Tier 1. If you don't want to fly things like the HE-112 or the CR-42, which we'll get to in further videos. If you don't want to fly the Italian planes, but you don't really like the HE-112s, the HE-51 does get pitted against better planes, significantly better planes, but it handles its ground attack role very well. The armament is sufficient enough that if you get the chance to get shots on other planes, things like P-36s or MiG-315s, even though those are a Tier 2 plane, they have a battle ranking of 2.0, so you will see those, or you may see those. The armament is sufficient with the tracer belt that it can take those planes down. So you will be able to shoot down other planes. It's just that a high-speed dogfight, you will lose most of the time because you'll never really be able to get the energy advantage over your opponent. But they've surprisingly they've impressed me. They've been better than I thought they would be as far as reserve planes are concerned. I'd tier them somewhere a little bit lower than the British ones, a little bit lower than the Russian ones, and somewhere slightly equal to the American reserves, or specifically the P-26 without the which one is it? Yeah, the A-33 and the B-35, somewhere in there. Fairly comparable. So HE-51s, pretty good. Surprisingly good. Use them as ground attack planes. Try to get the drop on people, but not as horrendous as I was expecting. So thank you guys for watching the video. Hoped you like it. If you did like it, give me a follow or subscribe or whatever they call it on this crazy website over here. And stay tuned for more videos as we cover all of the reserve planes and hopefully all of the planes in War Thunder. Until then, I will see you guys later. Take care.